What's up, guys? Jimmy here. I think it is time for perhaps one of the biggest update reveals to Brighter Shores since the game came out. If you guys aren't aware, Andrew just tweeted within the hour that we are getting two major changes to combat. First of these two changes is about merging all combat levels into one common combat stat, and the second is about a skill tree system. They go into some further details, elaborating on how the conversion process will happen between where we are now and where we'll get to. So in this video, I'm going to take this complex post, which I've probably read this 4 times because some of the details here were so hard for me to wrap my head around. I know people's heads are probably spinning. Some people aren't even awake yet, but I would like to try and simplify this, make it a bit more digestible, as I expect this to reach a larger audience than some of our videos. I know many people in the World of Warcraft and RuneScape communities had tried this game, and this is the type of update that is going to be game-changing. This is going to change perhaps the worst thing about Brighter Shores, which was the combat. Now, if you guys don't know me, I was one of the first people to hit level 500 in any skill. We rushed guard to 500, the push to 200 to 500. We had a blast, you know, even though we weren't doing it efficiently by any means. We were kind of just trying to set out on the voyage in the darkness and see if we could conquer it, and we did, right? But this is going to completely flip all the work that we've done into a different direction, which I believe is very good for the game. So let's break apart what this post is all about. So the first part here about there being a single combat profession. How this is going to work is that we will have one new profession and a new leaderboard even called combat level. This is the primary change. Now, what this means is that instead of the 4 professions that we have right now for Hopeport, Hope Forest, Mines, and Chronopolis, we will instead have what are being called Obelisk levels. Now, we're going to get into this because it's complicated. Just bear with me. So how this works is that your combat level is going to go through this merge system here, whereby you can get a maximum number of combat levels from each episode. Based on the scaling, they have reason to I'm not sure all the thought process that goes into this, but they're basically capping each episode's overall contribution towards your combat level, and they're choosing to do so at a rate of 30 for the first 2 episodes, individually and uniquely, and then an additional 40 per episode for every episode after. They mentioned this will continue with Stonewall Hill and beyond as they release future episodes, which we recently learned is as many as 20 plus more episodes, right? Now, what this means is that the combat level cap, when this update goes live, assuming it comes out before episode 5, is going to be 140. Now, how this will work is that people today may have up to 500 in each of the combat professions. This will get translated over such that anyone who had reached beyond, say, 30 in Hopeport is going to get levels into an additional skill, which is going to cap seemingly a bit differently. So we take the example of Hopeport, my 500 guard. I believe that the new cap for the Obelisk level for Hopeport is going to be 470, and 30 levels that I have done previously are actually going to go into my combat level, and then we expect the leaderboards to not be changed. Now, I'm not sure if the Obelisk level starts at 30 in order to make the leaderboard total levels unchanged. That was one thing that was mentioned. So we assume that people aren't going to lose 30 levels for combat. But they do mention things like 470 and 460, so I'm not sure if that's been decided yet. We'll have to wait and see. Now, they mention this concept of an endgame mechanic, which is the Obelisk level. How this will work is that if you grind through Hopeport and get up to level 30, say you leave it 5 levels early and you get to 25 guard, and then you go into Hope Forest, you'll find yourself a little bit underpowered for that zone. Now, there is gear that is going to have equipment levels, but the way that they're doing it now is that you'll actually have a combat level on your gear, but you'll also have a tuning level, which will indicate a level bonus that is on top of your gear, but basically is localized for that episode. How this works is that as you level up an episode beyond the combat level cap of an episode, and since we have to do episodes sequentially, right? You can't ever access Hope Forest without completing certain metrics in Hope Fort. How this will work is that the equipment and the monsters are going to be scaling with you in terms of your obelisk level. One other really important detail is that they are going to do a very interesting level scaling change, which is essentially going to remove the easy combat penalty. What they're going to do is make it so that regardless of like what you're fighting, if you're more than 10 levels above the monsters level, then it's going to scale. They're actually going to make it so bosses are always going to be a little bit harder. So these two changes I think are going to really modify how we see the drops in the game being affected. Right now, I'm never going to go back to goblins because they're never going to drop anything good for me because of the penalty. But without that penalty, maybe there's a reason for me to go farm. For example, thieves might drop the 10% pots. Maybe it's actually worthwhile for me to go and try stuff like that. So this does make a lot of possibilities more interesting. For crafting, there are severe implications, right? We know that crafting right now, you could make any gear up to level 500, and there's not a lot of unique components. We've talked a lot about itemization lately. I say unique components, but we don't have a lot of ways to make our gear unique, right? But what this is going to change, which I think is actually very, very major, is that the combat stat on your gear will be kind of tied to the episode. So if you see a piece of combat gear that's level 45 with a tuning level of 400, you know that it's a Hope Forest high level monster that was killed, right? Because the combat level is going to be proportionate to where it was dropped, which episode it was received in. What this means also is that there's going to be power creep that we've not seen yet. When episode 5 comes out, we presume the level cap will go up to 180, and the equipment that drops there will go up to a certain range, right? Now, what's really cool about this is that this means that the higher end of each episode, which will slowly be a bar that comes down, you know, basically episode 6's cap will be going up and up and up, right? But the minimum combat to get to, say, episode 14, by my math, if we're adding 40 levels each, it's basically going to work out that the crafters will actually not be able to keep up. So there's one small crafting change. That is that when you craft equipment, you are going to be able to craft 60 levels higher than your crafting level. So for weapons, for example, if you are creating gear for episodes 1 and 2, which you've already cleared because you're crafting, which is in episode 3 profession, that means you can create all of that equipment and you can use that equipment as well in episode 3. That seems to be about where they balanced it. You're actually going to have difficulty crafting equipment immediately for episode 4. So there's a bit of progression that's tied into the skill, and they're also capping the utility of that crafting skill. So I'm very curious to see what this game will look like. We just heard them talk about there being 20 plus episodes, so are we going to have new ways to extend professions? Will there be like an advanced crafting skill or profession that gets unlocked? I'm very excited to see how this plays out. Of course, what this opens the door to is having very cool rewards in each episode that are not going to necessarily destroy the competition from the future, and they're not going to make previous content irrelevant, because there will still be this tuning concept, and you're still going to have to progress through episodes in a linear way. But of course, there may be some repeatability within those episodes, which will make them really enjoyable and unique. So I'm overall very excited to see what this actually ends up transpiring as. There are many, many caveats with this. We've seen that this is just a preview. So all these things are subject to change, and it is all still in discussion. So I highly recommend you to check this post. And before closing the video, I have to also mention the skill tree. Now, this is perhaps the most up in the air part of this whole post. There's really two important ideas here. Number one is that you will have a character upgrade tree, as written in the post here. This will unlock upgrades as you increase your combat level, but then each obelisk, meaning each episode, will also have its own upgrade tree. So certain gear may have like certain upgrade tree requirements in order to use that gear. There's very interesting trade-offs in this, and I'm super curious to see how people are going to be building their trees, how large that decision process is to decide what do you want to invest into. So the things that we've seen here, it says increase the level of the weapon you can wield. So you have weapon and armor proficiency, You have your base max hit in all 6 colors, so it's like an elemental affinity type deal, but looking at offense and defensive deflection as well. Your maximum HP, unlocking the higher monster skins, which is basically getting you like an improved tier of the monsters. So if you guys weren't aware, as of making this video, before now, whenever you leveled up, you acquired all of the base stats. And essentially what that meant is that you just felt this natural, really kind of boring power curve where you didn't really know like how much you were getting stronger. It barely felt like you were even overpowering the monsters you were fighting, because every single fight, whether you're level 200, 500, or 50, kind of felt the same, right? Every fight was somewhere between basically 20 and 60 seconds, right? Depending on how prepared you were for the fight, if you're bringing in the big buffs or if you're just going in, against something like that's crazy hard for you. And how this is going to change is that you're going to be making decisions every time you level up. You're not going to get like that natural HP, natural offense, natural deflection. You're gonna have to choose, okay, I'm going to be strategic. Maybe I'm going to be fighting goblins next, so I actually need fire damage resistance, or I want more tempest damage offense, whatever it might be, right? So this is giving people the ability to be a bit more decisive about how they're building their accounts. And what this will lead to should be more individual, unique builds that people can use to hopefully really differentiate themselves. I think where this is probably the most impressive is how this will play in PvP, how it will help the economy balance itself out with power creep, and also how it won't let crafting become too strong. It kind of puts like a finite limitation on it, but it also like opens up the possibilities of what the future can hold. It adds to the mystery component. So I'm personally super excited about this. I think this is a fantastic update. It sounds like there won't be major leaderboard changes, but there is a small note which I'll leave you guys with, which is that the new combat level leaderboard should require you to get all of these stats. And then once episode 5 comes out, there will be like another race for pushing those combat levels. It looks like the cap is going to be pretty low, so I'm not sure how it's going to initialize. It might kind of be like an irrelevant leaderboard at first, but they do throw that in there. So that is one thing I will be considering if we want to kind of prep to get some of those combat levels, but even the Obelisk levels kind of planned out. So we're still going to be working on Hopeport. I have my forage level. We got about 150 levels to go. Hoping to get that done by next weekend, but officially get a date out on stream. Hopefully by tonight, honestly. I think we'll have a pretty good handle on it. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to drop them in the comments. I think we're all kind of discussing this in real time, and I know that I might have missed something. I probably didn't explain something correctly, but let me know what you guys think of this update and what you're going to be doing to change your plans, or maybe you're coming back to the game and not sure what you want to do. Let's see if we can figure this out together, but I think this could be one of the biggest positive updates that the game has had since it came out. So excited to see as this game matures, working toward a full release. Thanks so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.